see you like thrown off by, me saying like, oh, I used my eyes and I saw that he was awesome and it was against good competition and all these just totally subjective variables that like, what how do you quantify awesome? How do you quantify, he looked awesome. It was against good competition. Like this is just all like from your memory and from your perspective of what good was.
Here's the deal. When I look at this stuff, the process is super important. And I like to talk about my bias and I like to talk about what I feel on something because ultimately, here is the numbers. If 65% of the time you were right, you could be a professional gambler and never have to work again in your life.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about trying to be right 100% of the time.
No,
we're trying to talk about being real. And so for me, my failures are as important as my successes. And my lens, the way I look at this stuff, I look at it through the numbers. I will analyze everything in a league, and then I will try to figure out these things. And then I'll take the numbers after I've developed so I have a few different complicated spreadsheets that I've built that will analyze what the points are, what the leagues are, what they do, what they value, what is this. And then after I'm done with that, I look at and I try to find a few spots that I feel like could be value rich for my process. And that's basically where I'm at.
That 4 sentences was awesome. Say that because I don't like saying that you incorporate, a spreadsheet and it's not all like everything has to be analytics. I'm not talking about that. It's just like
it's like the process is a process. It's not a faux process.
I try to overlay the analytics with my personal views.
Right.
And I try to find the bright spots in between those. So you can't see. I'm looking and I'm trying to say, okay, here's my analytics. What are the parts that fall between the cracks? What are the lights that come through the dark? What can I see that is different than others? What are,
okay,
sometimes.
Good. So that's what triggers me because how does that help the listener?
Well, what I was just saying was value.
They can't.
We don't know.
Like your eyes and your expertise is not translatable. Like that may work for you and that's great. And I'm not saying that that's the wrong process. Like that's your process, but that can't really help someone into like, you can talk about it. Like say, I do this that is replicable. I factor in, and weight the scoring system and available players and things like that. And I use a spreadsheet. Like somebody could do that, but to tell someone like, and then I use my eyes to process, like that is where it's difficult for me, not because it doesn't align with my process, but because as a listener, that doesn't help me, right?
Well,
so
they can't.
The way I'm looking at Kyle's approach, and correct me if I'm wrong on this by all means, but it's you are starting with the analytics first. You're going through this regimen of analytics, and then you're knowingly, intentionally applying your bias on top of that to see where there's consistencies or inconsistencies, and that's where you make your decision. So the only difference between that and maybe a lot of other participants out there in the hobby is they're not doing the analytics part, or maybe they are, but everybody's applying their own biases. Everybody's applying their own lens. Some people are doing it with a little bit more foundation in objective data. Some people are just throwing darts. So that's, but Kyle, I think you'd be willing to admit, like, yes, I'm applying biases toward this. This is not a purely 100% analytical process for me. I'm just trying to be the successful gambler. I'm not trying to be a computer.
Right.
So, take that, Jeremy, and say like, okay, so as a patient, let's analyze that layer of bias that you're putting on top of your data. And is that helping you or hurting you? Even if it's helping you 65% of the time, is it hurting you in ways that might be unpredictable and bad?
Yeah. As a therapist, my response would have, if you would have said like, I'm not trying to be a computer or something like that, I'd be like, it sounds like you're concerned that I'm trying to make you a computer.
Right.
What do you think about that? And
so
you'd
think about
so
this interaction is what's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
Because
this is a segment, by the way.
I'm totally okay with being patient zero.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna feed you with stuff that I know is going to amplify your enthusiasm, Jeremy, for the situation. So that was
so diplomatic.
Like
I'm going to try to piss you off because that makes good content. So this is the process I'm going to use to goad you.
Did I mention that I was a hockey player? So let me tell you a story. I was once in a hockey game.
I can't wait.
I was once in a hockey game where I got punched in the face. And the ref came over and said, 2 minutes, white, 2 minutes, red. And I was like, what the hell, man? The guy punched me in the face. I didn't do anything. And he said, I heard what you said. And I said, fair enough. And I skated to the box.
Right? We have to know. What did you say?
Well, it doesn't matter. That's the whole point, right? Man, if I was skating, I was chirping. That's the whole point of hockey, right? So that was how it was, right?
That movie where like the judge like awarded them no points.
Billy Madison.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Where do you know points?
That was the ref.
Mercy on your soul. Made everyone dumber. Listen to that. But wrong would have been just fine. My world that I'm coming from, the like Gettleman haters, the hate Jason Garrett talking about process and not using process, guys that talk about, we've got all the analytics guys, and then who was it? McCarthy. So it wasn't McCarthy that did this first, but McCarthy had this like really cool idea of bringing all these coaches together and like doing this whole thing for a year. And then he was like, yeah, actually, we didn't watch all the tape. I just did that to get the job. And analytically, there's a time and a place for that. And like all that basically means is you don't actually want to use the numbers. And it's not to replace, the watching of the film and that expertise. It's to augment it with raw data that can't be disputed. It's information that needs to be incorporated because it's things that the eye cannot capture and the brain cannot. As good as your brain is, it can't capture the numbers on, like it can't capture. You can say like this guy's a great separator, but you can look at all of his routes and get an actual separation distance, at target, at route run, like all those things are really important to understand, from a coach's perspective, like where to line that guy up, what the speed of that, it's not all about 40-yard dash, but if he's getting a full yard separation more on guys that run higher than a 4.5 or whatever, like you want to match him up with that guy. And like, maybe your brain can do all that, but
so think about it like this. Have you seen the movie The Matrix?
Tell me what to do.
That I love. Have you seen the movie The Matrix?
I have seen the movie
Familiar.
The Matrix.
You know when Neo's looking at that screen of numbers, the iconic scene, and everybody else sees the lady in the red dress? That's what numbers are for me. Like, numbers are automatic. Like, I see those numbers that everything you said right there, I love, and I'm totally on board with, and that is how I see the entire game. What separates me from those numbers is how I analyze the college player versus the pro player. That's what I was trying to present earlier. It's not that I don't look at analytics. I am so much more into analytics than I am into that. What I'm saying is those numbers are there. People can talk about them. Everybody knows those numbers. The thing that makes
not everybody knows those numbers though. A lot of
I'm
people
weird.
know-
Okay,
everybody-
so
No,
everybody
everybody
that
knows
I-
that those numbers are there, but they want to trust their eyes because they trust themselves.
No. That's not me.
Okay.
I look at the numbers, and then I put my eye on top of it, and I look through those numbers,
Fair.
and I try to see where there's light coming through.
Yeah.
Like when
Yeah, no,
Dak
I mean-
Prescott got picked in the 4th round, and I called my buddy, and I was like, "This isn't right. Like this guy should have been way earlier than that." Like now, I've been wrong before, but there are some times where I'm like, "Okay, this one's different, right?" And getting a quarterback who can win that much, who had that much success in a system that he had, it was like it. I understand how the game works, and sometimes there's this and sometimes there's that, but man, when you can snag a guy and translate that into Dynasty, I wasn't playing Dynasty football at the time. Translate that into Dynasty football, I'd have been all on board with going after him in the 2nd or 3rd round, 1 QB. Like, I'd have grabbed him. Nowadays, in 1 QB, he's going to be, maybe worth a 1st rounder. I got him in one of these leagues straight up.
I get that, and I know that we're just kind of like spitballing right now, but just like I don't know how helpful that is. Like,
I agree.
Yeah, the average
I don't
player is probably
particu-
not going to have that perspective on the game.
I agree that you're good at this and you have your own method of doing it. I just don't think that anybody cares that you're good at it.
Right. Oh, you're definitely right about that. That's life in general, right?
Well, what's more is I think
so I
people
think
have to
that-
take your word for it that you're that good at it, and it's not
Right.
you just
Yeah,
pretending
and that's
that
fine.
you're
Like, we don't want to act like we're idiots and we don't know what we're talking about. But at the same point, like, I don't want us to talk like we know how to do it. Like, we know the right process. Like, this is great, but, this is how I do it and it works. I want it more to be, this is what I do and it, has worked for me, but that may not be you. And that's perfectly fine.